Welcome to Sleep Through Space. Tonight, we will be diving deep into all 10 recognized dimensions. Ready? When we talk about dimensions, most people immediately imagine complex sci-fi concepts, folding universes, parallel timelines, realms beyond human understanding. But to truly explore all 10 dimensions, we must start at the absolute foundation, the simplest idea, the smallest possible piece of reality, the thing so basic that we often forget it exists. A single dimension. Not a universe, not a surface, not even a shape, just a line. It sounds almost too simple, but this is where everything begins, and understanding this first dimension is the key to understanding all the ones that follow. Every higher dimension is built on the ones beneath it, like stacking layers of complexity. If the higher dimensions are skyscrapers, the first dimension is the ground floor. Yet this ground floor is far more profound than most people realize. The essence of the first dimension. The first dimension consists of only one measurable property: length. No width, no height, no depth, no volume. A pure, straight, infinite line. Imagine a single point, a zero-dimensional object. It has no size, no shape. It simply exists. When that point moves in any direction, no matter how slightly, it forms the first dimension, a straight line extending outward. This first dimension is the essence of direction itself. If you were a creature living purely in this dimension, your entire universe would be a straight pathway, forward and backward. Nothing else. No ability to step over or under anything because over and under do not exist. There is no room for them. There is not even a concept of sideways. This universe would be unimaginably simple, but for its inhabitants, it would be everything. Why the first dimension matters. The reason we start here is not because it's deep or dramatic, but because it teaches the fundamental rule of dimensions. Each new dimension is created by adding a direction the previous one does not have. 1D, a line. 2D, a line extended sideways. 3D, a flat surface extended upward. 4D, a 3D world extended through time. And so on. It all begins with that first stretch of existence. Synthetic, simple, and elegant. But the first dimension also carries a hidden power, one most people overlook. The first dimension as pure potential. To understand the higher dimensions, we must view the first dimension not as a finished thing, but as a template, a direction along which anything can grow. Think of it like this. A tree grows upward. A river travels forward. Light moves in a straight beam. Even time, in some interpretations of physics, behaves like a single straight line. The first dimension is not just a geometric idea, it is the foundation of motion, change, and cause and effect. If you strip existence down to its bare minimum, the first dimension survives. Every physical object can be broken into lines. Every graph reduces to axes. Every function is expressed on a line. Every measurement begins with length. It is the simplest possible container for information. And yet, everything that exists today, the galaxies, the oceans, the atoms, evolved from simple structures that followed simple lines. Complexity grows along a single path before it spreads outward. In this sense, the first dimension is the womb of the universe. Before there were planes, before there were volumes, before there were worlds, there was direction. There was distance. There was the line. Experiencing the first dimension as a human. It may feel abstract, but you actually interact with the first dimension constantly. When you walk forward, you are temporarily living the logic of 1D. When you measure your height, the number itself is 1D information. When you draw a single stroke with a pencil, that stroke is one-dimensional at its core. Anytime you think of point A to point B, you are thinking in one dimension. In fact, if you were forced to reduce your life to the simplest description possible, it would be a single line of events stretching from your birth to your present moment. That is your personal timeline, a one-dimensional representation of your entire existence. This is important because as we move to higher dimensions, timelines will reappear in far more complex forms. The physics hidden inside 1D. Even though the first dimension seems too basic to be interesting, some of the most powerful physical concepts originate here. Number 1, wave propagation. Waves, the heartbeat of quantum mechanics, can be modeled in one dimension. A vibration traveling down a string is a 1D wave. This simple behavior becomes exponentially more complex in higher dimensions. Number 2, strings in string theory. In string theory, one of the leading models for explaining the universe, the smallest building blocks of reality are not points, but one-dimensional strings. These strings vibrate along tiny 1D lines, and the nature of their vibration determines whether they become electrons, quarks, photons, or anything else. So, in a very literal sense, the universe may be built out of one-dimensional objects. Number 3, quantum tunneling and probability lines. In quantum physics, the probability of a particle's position is mapped along lines. Those lines, probability waves, follow the rules of 1D structure even though the real world is 3D. Again, the simplest dimension hides in the most complex theories. Life in the first dimension. A thought experiment. To understand dimensions, it helps to imagine what it would be like to live inside them. Imagine you are a being who exists entirely in one dimension. Your world is an infinite line. You can't look left or right because those directions do not exist. You only perceive the world as points in front of you or behind you. If another creature stood behind you and moved forward, it would just appear as a point getting closer. You couldn't see its shape because shape requires width. If a massive object crossed your line, you would never know its size. You would only feel the moment a single point intersected your universe. Your entire reality would be closer, farther, ahead, behind. Everything, friendship, travel, danger, survival, would happen along that single line. To you, this world would be complete. But we, in higher dimensions, know that such a universe is missing 99.9% of what reality can be. This is precisely how higher dimensional beings would see us. We think our world is complete, 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension, but a being in the 10th dimension would view us the way we view the 1D line. Flat, simple, limited. The first dimension teaches humility. How the first dimension builds the second. Now we approach the critical transition, the moment one dimension becomes 2. How does reality expand? The answer is simple. A second dimension is created by extending the first dimension in a direction it cannot already move. If you take a line and shift it sideways, you generate a plane. This is not just a math trick, it is the exact mechanism by which complexity arises in nature. When particles gain new degrees of freedom, they are effectively gaining new dimensions. When space expands, it does so by generating new directions. When information becomes more complex, it moves along more axes. From this single idea, the entire ladder of dimensions will rise. The first dimension as a blueprint for higher ones.
Part 2. The second dimension. The birth of shape. To continue our journey through the 10 dimensions, we begin exactly where Part 1 left off, standing at the edge of a line, the first dimension, and watching it expand into something new, something broader, something more expressive. The transition from the first dimension to the second is not simply a mathematical operation. It is the moment when the universe learns how to create form. It is the moment structure becomes possible. It is the moment where geometry, the language of nature, is born. Before the second dimension, the universe could only express distance. Now it gains the ability to express shape. And with shape, everything changes. What the second dimension truly is. Most people think of the second dimension as something flat, a sheet of paper, a drawing, a cartoon. But the second dimension is not just flatness. It is the presence of two perpendicular directions that define a surface: length, width. Imagine the original line of the first dimension stretching out infinitely in one direction. Now imagine sliding that entire line sideways. As it moves, it sweeps out a perfectly flat, infinite surface. That surface is 2D. It contains an entirely new direction, one the 1D line could never access. If the first dimension represents the idea of a path, the second dimension represents the idea of an area. Instead of moving only forward and backward, a being in the second dimension can now move forward, backward, left, right. Those four simple possibilities form the foundations of a universe. Life in a flat world. Let's imagine another thought experiment, a universe called Flatland. Not in the fictional sense, but in the literal physical sense. A realm where only two dimensions exist. In this world, you have no height, you have no depth. You exist as a shape drawn onto a surface. A flat being cannot lift itself off the ground. It cannot look over anything. It can only move along the surface in any direction. If you were a circle in this world, another circle approaching you would not look like a shape. You would only see its cross-section, a single line growing and shrinking as it traveled. You would never experience its full outline all at once. You could never truly see yourself either, because vision requires height, which does not exist. In a 2D universe, visibility is restricted to edges and intersections. Everything is contact. There is no up or down. Those concepts simply have no meaning. It is strange, limited, alien. And yet it contains something revolutionary: form. For the first time in the dimensional ladder, meaning can be expressed through structure. Triangles, squares, curves, these carry information. A 1D line cannot encode shape, but a 2D surface can. This is why the second dimension is a major leap forward. It is the first dimension where complexity becomes visible. The power of adding a new direction. The simplest way to appreciate the second dimension is through its ability to create variation. When you add one new access to the universe, the possible relationships between objects explode dramatically. In 1D, two objects can only relate in one way, closer or farther along the same path. In 2D, the relationships explode, near or far, left or right, above or below, relative positioning, not literal height, diagonal displacement, bounded regions, shapes and angles, intersections and boundaries. Suddenly, the universe has the ability to define inside and outside. This is an enormous conceptual leap. A circle in a 2D plane has an interior and an exterior. A line cannot have this distinction. It has no room for it. This ability to enclose space becomes crucial in higher dimensions. Every boundary in 3D reality traces its lineage back to a circle or polygon in 2D. Every organism, every cell, every structure, every map, all of it relies on the rules discovered in the second dimension. How the universe itself reflects 2D principles. Even though we live in a 3D world, many natural systems rely heavily on 2D behavior. 1. Biological membranes. Cell membranes behave like two-dimensional surfaces. They fold, stretch, and enclose volumes the same way shapes behave in 2D. 2. Planetary disks. Solar systems begin as 2D disks of dust. Gravity flattens gas clouds into planes, which later form planets, asteroids, and moons. 3. Waves and fields. Electric and magnetic fields often propagate across surfaces. Light can be modeled as oscillations on a plane. 4. Fundamental particle models. In some versions of quantum field theory, particles are represented on 2D surfaces that vibrate to create 3D outcomes, like ripples on a pond producing 3D splashes. The universe repeatedly uses flat structures as the foundation for more complicated ones. This suggests something profound. 2D behavior is not just a step up from 1D, it is a recurring pattern in the architecture of reality. The emergence of geometry. When the second dimension appears, something extraordinary becomes possible. Angles. A line by itself has no angle. Two lines intersecting on a plane create one. With angles comes measurement. With measurement comes structure. With structure comes mathematics. Mathematics is born in 2D. If all we had was the first dimension, geometry could not exist. A single line cannot create a triangle. It cannot enclose a shape. It cannot branch or rotate. But 2D allows rotations, reflections, symmetry, scaling, circular arcs, polygons, curvature. The mathematics of 2D is incredibly rich, far more expressive than 1D, and yet it feels intuitive to us because we see 2D worlds daily in drawings, screens, diagrams, maps, and signs. The leap from 1D to 2D is a leap from simplicity to possibility. Creatures limited to 2 dimensions. Imagining life in 2D challenges our intuition. Consider what biology would look like if organisms existed entirely on a plane. Circulation has no room to flow vertically, so all tubes must run horizontally. Organs must be simple patches, not volumes. Predators cannot jump, they must approach strictly along the plane. Creatures could only hide behind perfectly aligned edges. Predation becomes extremely directional. You cannot approach from above or below, you must approach from somewhere on the plane. Social behavior becomes fascinating. Two creatures meeting cannot pass each other without one stepping aside because there is no height to allow one to cross over the other. The entire concept of stacking, layering, or building upward is impossible. Cities would spread infinitely outward, but never upward. Even reproduction becomes bizarre, splitting or merging shapes rather than volumetric processes. For us, this world is unimaginable. But for a flat creature, it would be all they know. And just like we imagine beings in higher dimensions, they might imagine beings who can move in a direction they cannot comprehend, a direction called up. What happens when a 3D being interacts with a 2D world? Now imagine you, a 3D human, interacting with the 2D universe. To them, you would appear godlike. If you touched the 2D plane with your fingertip, its inhabitants would not see your full finger. They would only see the intersection, a growing and shrinking circle. If you placed your entire hand down, they would see 5 separate circles appear at once, your fingertips, moving independently. You could appear and disappear without explanation. You could reach into shapes and remove things from inside them without breaking the boundary. You could vanish instantly by lifting your hand upward, a direction they cannot perceive. This is exactly how higher dimensional beings would appear to us. To them, our 3D world is simply a hypersurface, a sheet that they could touch, manipulate, or leave at will, in ways we find impossible to comprehend. The parallels are intentional. By understanding 2D, we understand our place in the latter. Why the second dimension is crucial for the higher ones. Every dimension from this point on uses 2D logic as part of its foundation. 3D shapes are built from 2D surfaces. 4D hypershapes are built from 3D volumes, which are built from 2D faces.
Part 3. The third dimension. The arrival of reality. To understand the third dimension, we begin at the edge of a flat world. A world of shapes without depth. A world where existence is restricted to surfaces, infinite planes stretching in all directions but forever lacking height. For a moment, imagine standing inside that 2D universe. You are a shape, not a body. You exist only on a surface, not in space. You cannot rise, fall, or lift. You cannot see above because above isn't real. Your universe is a page, and you are the ink. Now imagine that an entirely new direction appears, one you have never known, never perceived, never even imagined. A direction that does not lie along your plane, but rises away from it. A direction perpendicular to everything you understand. This new direction is height. And with height, the universe becomes three-dimensional. It becomes our universe. The third dimension is not just a mathematical upgrade, it is the emergence of reality as we experience it. The arrival of volume, mass, structures, organisms, planets, stars, and galaxies. Without the third dimension, there is no chemistry, no biology, no life, no time as we perceive it. It is the dimension that gives everything its presence. Everything we know, every object, every person, every environment, is the result of length, width, and height working together. In this chapter, we enter the dimension we call home. What the third dimension truly represents. The third dimension is defined by one transformative addition: depth. The universe now has 3 independent axes: length, width, height. With these 3 directions, space can contain volume instead of just area. Where a 2D square sweeps upward to form a cube, a 2D circle rises into a sphere. A line becomes a plane in 2D, but a plane becomes a full space in 3D. This ability to form enclosed volumes allows the universe to store energy, create stable structures, and build systems complex enough to support life. The third dimension is the turning point where matter becomes possible. Why 3D enables matter. You can draw a chemical diagram on a 2D sheet of paper. You can sketch atoms, bonds, and molecules, but chemistry itself is not a 2D process. Atoms require 3D structures to form stable electron shells. Molecules depend on spatial arrangement. Proteins require 3-dimensional folding patterns to function. A 2D universe cannot support life as we know it because it lacks stable atomic orbitals, 3D molecular configurations, volumetric environments, pressure, temperature gradients, and atmosphere, circulatory systems with branching pathways. Each of these requires a dimension that allows branching, folding, and internal space. Life is a 3D phenomenon. A thought experiment. Life inside 3D. To appreciate why 3D is so extraordinary, imagine seeing your world as an outsider, as if you were a 2D being witnessing a universe with height for the first time. You would see objects passing over and under each other, creatures walking freely around obstacles instead of detouring, structures rising toward the sky instead of spreading endlessly, rivers flowing with layers of depth and turbulence, storms forming massive vertical towers of air and vapor, oceans with thousands of meters of depth that shape entire ecosystems, mountains rising like frozen waves, casting shadows across entire continents. To a 2D mind, a mountain would be unimaginable, a form that isn't just long or wide, but stretches upward beyond the plane. A fish navigating 3 dimensions of ocean would seem impossible, as would a bird moving freely through the sky. The world gains a freedom impossible in a flat universe. This freedom is what makes 3D reality dynamic, layered, and alive. Perspective, the gift of 3D vision. One of the most fascinating effects of the third dimension is visual perspective. In 2D, objects do not shrink with distance. In 3D, they do, creating the illusion of depth. Perspective gives us near and far, foreground and background, line of sight, depth perception, horizon and sky. Every painting, photograph, movie, and visual experience you've ever had depends on this one property of 3D space. Our brain uses 2 eyes, slightly offset, to create a stereoscopic image, a built-in depth calculator. Without it, the world would collapse into a flat projection. The third dimension gives vision meaning. What a 4D being would see in our world. Understanding the third dimension also helps us imagine the fourth. Just as a 3D being can see inside a 2D shape, revealing its interior instantly, a 4D being would see inside 3D objects without needing to open them. They would see the inside of your body at a glance, the interior of your house all at once, every room, every wall, every object layered together, the backsides of objects without walking around them. To them, our world would be transparent in the same way a 2D drawing is transparent to us. We see the entire shape, they would see the entire volume. Understanding the third dimension prepares us for the next, where reality becomes even stranger. But before we climb upward, we need to appreciate something crucial. The third dimension makes space possible, but it also makes motion meaningful. Space plus time, the hidden connection within 3D. Even though time is not technically a spatial dimension, the third dimension makes time function in the way we experience it. Think of it this way. A 1D or 2D organism would experience time as simple sequential change, with very limited ability to store information or create long chains of cause and effect. But a 3D organism exists in an environment where cause and effect ripple in many directions. Storms form from complex atmospheric volumes, ecosystems evolve through layered spatial interactions, objects fall through gravity acting on 3D mass. Organisms store memory through 3D neural networks. Engineering and technology rely on 3D spatial relationships. In a sense, 3D space gives time depth. Time becomes richer, more complicated, more story-like. Life is shaped by time, but time is shaped by space. How 3D beings appear to 2D beings. Consider again the flat land example. If a 3D creature interacted with a 2D being, it would appear to them as a shape that changes in impossible ways. If you place your finger onto the 2D plane, a circle appears suddenly. It expands. It contracts. It disappears. This entire sequence would seem magical, supernatural, or incomprehensible. But to you, a 3D observer, it's simply geometry. This analogy becomes essential for understanding higher dimensions. The importance of enclosed volume. In physics, the third dimension allows something incredibly important: containment. You can trap energy, heat, gas, fluid, material, organisms. You can create containers, rooms, engines, chambers, cells, lungs, oceans. Containment is the backbone of structure. Without the third dimension, the universe would be a thin sheet of interactions with no ability to store complexity. The third dimension in cosmology. Our universe expresses 3D behavior at the largest scales. Galaxies are 3D spirals and ellipses. Dark matter forms 3D halos around galaxies. Stars fuse hydrogen in 3D cores. Planets orbit in 3D space. Black holes warp 3D geometry. The very shape of space itself, curved, expanding, connected through gravity, relies entirely on 3D structure. Even string theory, one of the main frameworks for understanding higher dimensions, starts with the assumption that our everyday world exists in 3 extended spatial dimensions. Everything above dimension 3 is extra, or compactified, or hidden, but without the third dimension, there is no space for the higher ones to fold into. The latter begins here, but it does not end here. Why the third dimension is the turning point of reality. If the first dimension is direction and the second dimension is shape, then the third dimension is existence. It is the first dimension that can host planets, stars, life, ecosystems, objects, physical forces, complex motion, weather.
Part 4. The fourth dimension, where space learns to move. To enter the fourth dimension, we first need to understand a strange truth. You already live in it, but you cannot move through it freely. You cannot turn your head and look at it. You cannot walk forward or backward along it. And yet, every second of your life is spent traveling through this dimension at a constant, unstoppable rate. This dimension is time. But time is not just a ticking clock. It is a direction, a full axis of reality, woven into the fabric of the universe. Without it, nothing could change, nothing could move, nothing could grow, evolve, or age. A universe without time is a universe without story. In this chapter, we leave the world of static space and step into the dimension that gives space meaning. The fourth dimension is not time passing, it is the path you're taking. Imagine pressing pause on the entire universe. Every object freezes. Every planet stops orbiting. Every star stops burning. Every neuron in your brain halts mid-signal. If time were simply motion, hitting pause would just stop movement. But what actually happens is deeper. If time stops, existence stops. Because motion is not possible without time. But matter itself also depends on time. Atoms are stable because of constant oscillations. Energy vibrates. Particles interact through time-based processes. Even the structure of space-time curves through time. In other words, time is the axis that allows the universe to update itself. Without it, everything becomes a frozen sculpture, a 3D photograph with no events, no transitions, no possibility of experience. The fourth dimension is not optional. It is the engine of reality. Your life is a trail through the fourth dimension. Think of yourself not as a single moment, but as a long, continuous shape stretching through time. Right now, you're experiencing a single cross-section, the you of this moment. But in 4D space-time, your entire life exists as a long, unbroken line.
Physicists call this your world line. From the moment you were born to the moment you're reading this to every moment you will experience in the future, you form a shape in time. You are a 4D object, but you only perceive one slice at a time, a constantly advancing present. A being who could perceive the fourth dimension fully would see your life laid out like a sculpture, every moment happening at once. To you, life feels like a movie. To a 4D observer, it's the DVD. The whole thing exists simultaneously. How 4D beings would see 3D objects. To understand the fourth dimension, compare it to the relationship between 2D and 3D. A 3D being can look down on a 2D shape and see its entire interior. A 4D being can do the same to our 3D world. They would see inside your body, inside your home, inside the earth, inside every object, the past and future positions of objects, the complete timeline of every particle. Your walls, locks, privacy, and perspective would mean nothing to a 4D observer, just as a drawn circle on paper cannot hide its interior. A 4D being wouldn't move through time the way we do. They would navigate time like we navigate space. They could step into next Tuesday, walk back into your childhood, observe the rise and fall of civilizations like frames in a flipbook. Time becomes a place, not a process. Space plus time equals space-time. In 3D, you have full freedom. Forward, backward, left and right, up and down. The fourth dimension adds a new axis that flows perpendicular to all three. But here's the twist. Einstein discovered that space and time are not independent. They are fused into a single structure, space-time. Moving through space affects how you move through time. Travel faster, time slows down for you. Experience stronger gravity, time slows down as well. This isn't theory, it's proven, measured, and used in technology like GPS. Time bends, time stretches, time warps. What we call gravity is actually the curvature of the fourth dimension. Mass doesn't pull objects, it bends space-time and objects follow the curves. This is why planets orbit stars. Not because of a force, but because they are following the geometry of 4D space-time. The fourth dimension is not a place. It is the fabric of reality. Why can't you move freely through the fourth dimension? In 3D space, you can move in any direction you choose. But in the fourth dimension, you are locked into a single path, forward. Why? Because your biology is built to experience time as a one-way process. Your memory only records the past. Your brain processes cause-effect. Your metabolism depends on irreversible chemical reactions. Your consciousness is tied to sequential perception. Your arrow of time is determined by entropy, the principle that disorder always increases. A broken glass cannot unbreak. Smoke cannot reassemble into wood. Heat does not return to cold spontaneously. In a universe where entropy moves forward, you move forward. Even if higher dimensional beings exist, humans are bound by entropy's direction. Time is a river, and you are floating downstream. If time is the fourth dimension, what is the shape of the universe? A powerful way to visualize the fourth dimension is to imagine the entire universe, from the Big Bang to the end of time, as a massive 4D object. All of space, plus all of time, existing simultaneously. The expansion of the universe? That's a geometric transformation of the 4D structure. Black holes? They are places where the fabric of space-time is warped so intensely that time slows to a crawl and the future collapses inward. Light? It travels along the shortest possible paths in space-time, which appear as straight lines, but are actually curves. In this view, the past still exists. The future already exists. The present is simply the location you're crossing. Time becomes just another coordinate. A mind-bending thought. What is a 4D object? We cannot see 4D objects directly, but we can imagine their shadows. A 3D cube casts a 2D shadow. A 4D hypercube, tesseract, casts a 3D shadow. What would that look like? It would appear as a shape that changes size, bends, folds, stretches, intersects itself, and rotates in impossible ways. A 4D creature would appear, change shape, and vanish unpredictably the way a 3D object appears to a 2D world, because we would only see cross-sections of it. Time travel, a hypothetical 4D ability. If a being existed above the fourth dimension, they might see all time like a map. But even a true 4D being, one who experiences all 3D space and time naturally, could potentially navigate alternate timelines, re-entry into past moments, branching future pathways. But these abilities break the laws of physics for us because our biology is locked into sequential perception. We cannot travel time because we are not built to manipulate the 4D axis directly. To a 4D being, it might be as simple as walking through a door. Why time is only the beginning? Many people think the fourth dimension is the highest one, but in theoretical physics, string theory, M theory, and various multidimensional models, the universe may have 10, 11, 26 dimensions depending on the model. Time is just a first step into dimensions beyond our senses.
Part 5. The fifth dimension, where alternate realities begin. If the fourth dimension gives us a single continuous timeline, the path your life takes from birth to death, then the fifth dimension opens the door to something far more expansive, every path your life could have taken. This is the dimension where choice becomes geometry, where possibility becomes structure, where every what-if splits into its own timeline. The fifth dimension is not about time itself anymore. It's about variations of time, the branching of universes based on every possible outcome. To enter this dimension, we leave the fixed river of time and step into an ocean filled with countless currents, each representing a different version of your world. This is where the multiverse begins. A single timeline cannot contain all possibilities. In the fourth dimension, you live out one storyline. It feels linear, singular, and unchangeable. But the universe, according to many interpretations of physics, does not limit itself to one outcome. Quantum mechanics suggests that particles don't take a single path. They explore all possible paths at once. That's the foundation of the fifth dimension, a structure containing all possible timelines that begin from the same starting point. It's not yet the full multiverse, that's the sixth dimension, but the fifth dimension is the first branching layer. Your life in the fifth dimension is not one line through time, it is a tree. How reality branches in the fifth dimension. Imagine you're standing in a room. There is a door on the left and a door on the right. In the fourth dimension, you choose one and the story continues. But in the fifth dimension, both outcomes exist simultaneously. In one timeline, you choose the left door. In another, you choose the right door. Both realities are equally real. Both unfold with the same laws of physics. Both move forward in time. Both contain versions of you. The fifth dimension contains the set of all possible futures that follow from the present, and the present is constantly splitting. Every moment branches, every decision splits, every random event divides reality into new variations. The fifth dimension is a map of all the possible outcomes connected to your timeline. You cannot move freely through the fifth dimension, but you are constantly creating it. Unlike time, which pulls you forward, you cannot consciously navigate the fifth dimension. You cannot jump into a version of your life where you chose a different job, made a different friend, avoided a mistake, or took a different opportunity. But the fifth dimension exists as the mathematical space where those timelines are stored. You experience only one of the many branches, but the others unfold in parallel. The universe explores every possibility, even though you live only one of them. Quantum mechanics and the fifth dimension. The idea of alternate timelines is not just science fiction. It emerges naturally from quantum mechanics. Electrons don't choose one path. They behave as if they take every path simultaneously. Photons don't choose one slit. They behave as if they pass through both. This leads to the many worlds interpretation. Every quantum event creates a branching of reality. Not exploding universes, not dramatic splits, just subtle differences. An atom decays at a slightly different moment. A neuron fires at a different angle. A molecule vibrates at a different frequency. Small differences become large differences over time. The fifth dimension is the space where those slight variations accumulate into entirely different histories. The fifth dimension as a landscape of possibilities. To imagine the fifth dimension, picture a sheet of paper. Draw a straight line across it. This line is your timeline. Now draw another line branching off at an angle, and another, and another. Each line represents a timeline where something unfolded differently. Now expand this to millions of branches, then billions, then an uncountable infinity of them. Soon the paper is completely filled. Every possible outcome, no matter how small, exists somewhere on this sheet. Now imagine this branching expansion not on a 2D surface, but in a 5D structure so complex that human geometry cannot capture it. This is the true scale of the fifth dimension. A 5D being would see your entire life and every version of it. A fourth dimensional being could see your whole life laid out in time. A fifth dimensional being would see every version of your life, every possible future, every alternative past, every branch of every choice, every probability unfolding. To them, your existence is not a single path, it is a vast web. They would know the life you lived, the life you could have lived, and every variation in between. They could traverse timelines the same way you walk through a forest, choosing branches, moving between paths, exploring possibilities. To you, your life feels fixed. To them, it is a constellation of parallel histories. Why the fifth dimension is still connected to your universe. Even though the fifth dimension contains countless branches, it does not yet include universes with different physical laws. Every timeline in the fifth dimension shares the same physics, began with the same Big Bang, contains the same fundamental constants. What changes is the arrangement of events. The fifth dimension is the space of all possible realities that follow the same rules as ours. The sixth dimension is where we step beyond that, into alternate universes with different laws entirely. But in the fifth dimension, everything is familiar, just rearranged. The geometry of choice. The idea that choices create geometry might sound abstract, but in higher dimensional physics, this is exactly what happens. Every decision you make places you on a new branch of the fifth dimension, not because your choice creates a new universe, but because the universe already contains all possible paths. You simply travel along one of them. Choice is not a creation process. Choice is a selection process. The fifth dimension contains all the available options. Your consciousness moves through one. Why we can't access the fifth dimension directly? Humans experience time as a one-way progression because our biology evolved in a linear environment, our consciousness depends on memory and prediction, entropy gives time an arrow, and perception is limited to the present moment. To perceive the fifth dimension, you would need to see outside the flow of time.
you would need to see the entire structure of your life and all its variations in a single view. Our minds aren't built for this. Our senses evolved to survive, not to comprehend infinite timelines. But the fifth dimension remains a real possibility within modern physics. A visual metaphor, the garden of forking paths. Imagine yourself walking through a garden filled with countless branching paths. Every few steps, the path divides, left or right, forward or sideways, stone path or grass, light or shadow. You can only walk one path at a time, but the garden itself contains all of them. This is the fifth dimension. You choose a route, but the garden remains whole. Every path is real, every path is complete, every path is connected. You simply experience one walk through the garden. The fifth dimension is the boundary between determinism and freedom. If there were only 4 dimensions, your life would be completely determined. One timeline, one outcome. The fifth dimension introduces variation, branching, choice. Does this mean free will exists? Physics cannot answer that, but the fifth dimension gives the universe flexibility. It allows for uncertainty, unpredictability, creativity, and complexity. It turns the universe from a fixed script into a spectrum of possibilities. The fifth dimension as a precursor for higher realities. If time is the first step beyond space, and timelines are the second step beyond time, then the sixth dimension expands possibility further. New timelines, new beginnings, new universes, where even the laws of physics may change. But before stepping into a universe with different constants, forces, or structures, the fifth dimension gives us a gentler expansion, a dimension where everything is familiar, but every outcome is explored. The fifth dimension shows us that reality is not singular. It is layered, branching, and far more complex than the one timeline we experience.
Part 6. The sixth dimension. Universes with different starting conditions. If the fifth dimension shows us every possible path a single universe can take, then the sixth dimension steps beyond that entirely. In the fifth dimension, all universes share the same physical laws, the same constants, the same Big Bang. But in the sixth dimension, we enter a realm where even the starting conditions of the universe change. Not just different timelines, but different beginnings, different initial energies, different particle arrangements, different cosmic outcomes. This is the first true step into the multiverse, not just branching timelines, but entirely different universes. A universe is not defined only by its story, but by how its story begins. In the fifth dimension, universes diverge because of choices or quantum events after the Big Bang. But in the sixth dimension, universes diverge from the very first moment. This dimension includes universes where the density of the early cosmos was slightly higher, universes where gravity was slightly stronger or weaker, universes where stars formed differently, universes with different initial temperatures, universes where matter clumped in unfamiliar patterns. These might sound like small changes, but in cosmology, even tiny variations in initial conditions create drastically different worlds. The sixth dimension holds all universes that share the same physical laws as ours, but began with different starting conditions. It is the space of all cosmological what-ifs. A simple example, the strength of gravity. In our universe, gravity is incredibly weak compared to the other forces. If gravity had just been a tiny bit stronger, the world as we know it would not exist. Stars would collapse too quickly. Planets might never form. Life as we understand it would have no chance. In the sixth dimension, you would find universes identical to ours, except
Gravity is slightly stronger, or slightly weaker, or slightly different in distribution. Each variation leads to a different universe. Some might be filled with star clusters packed tightly together. Others could be vast, empty expanses with few galaxies. Some might never produce stable atoms at all. Some might produce far more complex structures than ours. These are all six-dimensional universes, the same laws, but different initial parameters. The sixth dimension as a cosmic library. Imagine a library where each book contains the entire history of a universe. The fifth dimension gives you multiple versions of one book, different editions, different endings, different plot twists. But the sixth dimension contains different books entirely. Each one begins differently. Each one follows different initial rules. Each one unfolds uniquely. Some universes expand rapidly, never forming stars. Some collapse instantly into black holes. Some cool too slowly for matter to form. Some produce endless cycles of expansion and contraction. And some, just like ours, create long, stable histories full of complexity. The sixth dimension is the shelf where all these books sit. A 6D being and how they would see reality. A fourth dimensional being sees all of time. A fifth dimensional being sees all possible timelines from a single Big Bang. A 6D being sees all possible timelines from all possible Big Bangs all at once. To them, the universe is not a story. It's a configuration space, a landscape of starting points. A 6D consciousness could compare universes, jump between different initial realities, examine every possible cosmic arrangement, understand how changing one early condition affects the entire future. Your entire universe, from its birth to its heat death, would appear to them as a simple point in a vast higher dimensional map. The geometry of different beginnings. To understand the sixth dimension, imagine drawing a circle on a sheet of paper. This circle contains all the possible timelines from the fifth dimension, all branching outcomes of your universe. Now imagine many circles, each representing a different universe with different initial conditions. These circles overlap, connect, form patterns, and fill a larger space. That larger space is the sixth dimension. Each circle is a complete universe. Each point on each circle is a timeline. Each branching pattern is a set of possible choices and outcomes. The sixth dimension is the geometry that holds all these circles. Why slight variations create vastly different universes? The cosmos is delicate, incredibly sensitive to initial settings. Change the temperature of the early universe by a fraction, and the elements formed after the Big Bang change. Change the density slightly, and the expansion of space changes. Change the symmetry of particles, and chemistry itself might not exist. The sixth dimension contains universes where hydrogen is rare. Stars burn differently. Galaxies have strange shapes. Life never begins. Life begins earlier. Life evolves into unimaginable forms. Life becomes the dominant force. life never develops consciousness. Life exists in ways we could not recognize. Every possibility unfolds somewhere in the sixth dimension. Why the sixth dimension still shares our physics. Although every universe in the sixth dimension begins differently, they all share the same laws, same forces, same particles, same quantum rules, same mathematics, same fundamental constants. The sixth dimension does not yet include universes where the laws themselves change. That is the seventh dimension. Here, in the sixth, differences come only from the initial conditions after the Big Bang. It's as if the universe is a recipe, and the ingredients are always the same, but the proportions vary. Sometimes the result is similar to ours, sometimes it is wildly different. Why the sixth dimension matters to cosmology. Modern physics often uses something called a phase space, a mathematical structure that shows all possible states of a system. The sixth dimension is like the phase space of the entire universe. Cosmologists use it to explore questions like, could the universe have expanded differently? What if inflation was slower or faster? Would galaxies form with different initial temperatures? How stable is the universe we inhabit? The sixth dimension helps scientists understand why this universe exists at all, rather than countless others that could have emerged. The sixth dimension and the anthropic principle. There's a controversial idea in physics called the anthropic principle. It suggests that the universe must have the right conditions for life, because if it didn't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. In a 6D landscape, most universes would not allow for life. Only a small fraction would, and the one you experience is one of those rare life-compatible paths. The sixth dimension gives context to why we find ourselves in a universe that seems so perfectly balanced. We exist in a timeline from a universe where existence is possible. Linking the fifth and sixth dimensions, possibilities versus beginnings.
Part 7. The seventh dimension, when the laws of reality themselves change. If the sixth dimension contains all possible universes that share our physical laws but began differently, then the seventh dimension expands far beyond that. This is the dimension where the rules of existence themselves begin to shift. Gravity may act differently. Light may behave differently. Quantum mechanics may not resemble the one we know. The forces that bind the universe might be arranged in new ways. The constant we rely on might not be constants at all. The seventh dimension is the space of all universes with different fundamental laws, each one following a unique blueprint. Here the cosmos becomes unrecognizable, not just in outcome, but in principle. It is the first dimension where even the basic equations of reality can be different. Why we need the seventh dimension. Think of the sixth dimension as a garden full of universes that all grew from the same seed, the same species of plant, but under different conditions. The seventh dimension contains entirely different species of reality, different forces, different building blocks, different mathematics governing everything. Physics as we know it is just one point in an impossibly vast landscape of potential rules. The seventh dimension is where that landscape unfolds. The constants that define our universe. Every universe relies on a small set of fixed numbers, constants, that define how everything works. These include the strength of gravity, the speed of light, the charge of the electron, the Planck constant, the cosmological constant, the masses of fundamental particles.
These numbers seem arbitrary. There is nothing in our mathematics or observations that tell us they must be what they are. In the seventh dimension, these values can vary freely. Each new set of constants creates a new universe with its own nature. Even slight shifts would produce entirely different realities. What does a universe with different laws look like? If the seventh dimension includes universes with entirely different rules, what might those rules produce? Here are possibilities physicists consider. 1. Universes with additional forces. Instead of 4 fundamental forces, there might be 5, or 10, or 1. Force strength could vary wildly. A universe with extremely strong gravity would collapse instantly. A universe with weak gravity might never form stars. A universe without atoms. If the electromagnetic force is slightly weaker or stronger, stable atoms cannot form. Such a universe would be a glowing plasma, never cooling into matter. A universe where light doesn't travel at a constant speed. Imagine a universe where light accelerates or slows down depending on the medium it passes through. Information, energy, and causality would behave unpredictably. A universe where time is not linear. Some physics models allow for looped time, or universes where the direction of time oscillates. In such a universe, the future and past might not be fixed ideas. A universe with exotic dimensions. Some laws might require 5 spatial dimensions, 10 spatial dimensions, no time at all, dual time dimensions. Reality could take shapes we cannot imagine. A universe with alternate quantum rules. Quantum mechanics could contain different forms of uncertainty, probability, or entanglement. Particles might not behave like particles. They could be fields, waves, or something entirely unrelated to our physics. A universe where symmetry behaves differently. Symmetry is the backbone of physics. Change it, and everything shifts. Energy, momentum, spin, all fundamental properties could take unfamiliar forms. The seventh dimension contains all such possibilities. A 7D being would see all possible sets of physics. A being living in the seventh dimension would not simply see one universe. They would see the complete catalog of possible physical realities. To them, all universes governed by quantum mechanics are only one category. All universes governed by other rules are equally present. Our universe would look like one point in a larger structure. They could navigate between universes the way you scroll through images in a gallery. They would not be bound by one set of laws. They would understand which universes collapse instantly, which universes are stable, which universes support formation of matter, which universes are chaotic, which universes allow life, which universes contain nothing but simple patterns. To them, the laws of nature are not fixed. They are options. Is the seventh dimension infinite? Mathematically, the seventh dimension is almost certainly infinite because each physical constant can take infinite values. Each constant can combine with others in infinite ways. Equations governing forces have infinite configurations. The space of possible universes defined by different laws is vast beyond human comprehension. And this raises a profound realization. Our universe is not the universe. It is just one configuration that happens to allow complexity. How physicists theorize the seventh dimension. There are several scientific frameworks that hint at the seventh dimension. String theory suggests many possible ways to compactify extra dimensions. Each compactification produces a universe with a different set of laws. The string landscape, a structure containing 10 to the 500 possible universes, each governed by unique constants. This is one way to visualize the seventh dimension mathematically. Quantum gravity models. In some theories, universes bubble out of a quantum foam. Each bubble has its own physical laws. Inflation theory describes expanding pocket universes, each with its own parameters. All these models hint at the same possibility. There are countless possible universes. The seventh dimension is where they exist. Why the seventh dimension is fundamentally different from the sixth dimension. Let's compare them. The sixth dimension, universes differ only in their initial conditions. Same particles, same forces, same constants, same laws, different origins. The seventh dimension, universes differ in their fundamental rules. Different particles, different forces, different constants, different mathematics, different structures of reality. In the sixth dimension, the rules are fixed. In the seventh dimension, the rules are flexible. This makes the seventh dimension exponentially larger and more complex. The seventh dimension and the limits of human imagination. We can imagine alternate timelines. We can imagine different universes with the same physics. But a universe where physics itself changes, our minds aren't built for that. Imagine trying to picture a world with 4 time dimensions, or a universe where forces repel instead of attract, or one where mass behaves like negative energy, or where geometry is non-Euclidean everywhere, or where existence is not made of particles but patterns. These possibilities might exist in the seventh dimension, even if we cannot fully visualize them. Would life exist in other sets of laws? It is possible that life exists only in universes similar to ours. Life exists in rare combinations of laws. Life exists in completely foreign ways. Life exists as patterns, not organisms. But we must accept an even deeper possibility. Most universes in the seventh dimension may be empty. Not dead, not barren, just impossible. Their laws might prevent complexity entirely. Ours may be one of the rare universes where matter, stars, chemistry, planets, and consciousness can emerge. That makes our existence extraordinary. What does it mean to exist in one set of laws out of infinite? It means the laws of nature are not inevitable. Our universe did not have to exist. Existence is not a guarantee. Reality is flexible at a fundamental level. We live in a universe fine-tuned for complexity. The seventh dimension turns the universe from a fixed system into a realm of endless possibility. And it prepares us for something even more profound. A dimension where universes are not only governed by different laws, they may not even share the same foundational reality. That is where the eighth dimension begins.
Part 8, the eighth dimension, when reality itself stops looking like reality. The seventh dimension let us explore universes with different laws of physics. But the eighth dimension goes even deeper. It questions the structure of reality itself. In this dimension, it's not just that the rules change. It's not just that constants shift or forces behave differently. Here, the very framework that allows a universe to exist can be different. Things like what counts as space? What counts as time? What counts as matter? What counts as cause and effect? What counts as existence itself? These concepts aren't guaranteed. They can be rewritten or replaced entirely. The eighth dimension is the space of all possible reality frameworks, even ones that don't resemble our universe in any recognizable way. This is where the idea of a universe stops being simple and becomes something far more abstract. Why the eighth dimension is needed? To understand why this dimension exists, imagine trying to write every possible type of story. Not every story uses the same grammar. Not every story uses the same language. Some stories aren't even words. They might be symbols, numbers, music, or images. The seventh dimension is like all the stories in one language with different rules. The eighth dimension is like all possible languages, including ones we can't comprehend. Here, reality becomes a flexible platform, a system that can host many different kinds of existence. Some of those systems might resemble universes. Some might not. What is a reality structure? A reality structure is a foundation that defines what existence can be. Our universe is built on a specific structure. 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time, quantum fields, particles, forces, space-time curvature. These are just ingredients of our structure. But the 8th dimension includes structures nothing like this. Maybe a reality could have no dimensions at all, or 1,000 dimensions, or dimensions that change constantly, or dimensions arranged in loops, knots, or branching webs, or dimensions that are not spatial, but logical or informational. Existence may not need space, or matter, or time, or energy. A reality might consist only of relationships, interactions, or patterns. In the 8th dimension, anything that can be defined, no matter how abstract, can be a structure. What could an 8th dimensional reality look like? And the answer is almost anything. Let's explore some possibilities theorists consider and others that stretch beyond normal science. Number 1, realities without space. Imagine a universe with no location. Nothing is left or right, near or far. Interactions occur based on entirely different principles. Maybe similarity, maybe resonance, maybe computation. A reality of pure information. Number 2, realities where time is not a line. In our universe, time flows forward. But in the 8th dimension, time could be circular. Time could branch. Time could have multiple directions. Time could be optional. Time might not exist at all. A reality without time would not change. Instead, it would simply be. Number 3, realities with non-physical building blocks. Our universe uses particles, waves, fields, energy. A different reality might be made of logic, vibration patterns, algorithms, consciousness, symbols, probability, geometry, abstract mathematical objects. A universe of pure math might exist entirely in relationships and equations. Number 4, realities with different logic. Even the logic systems we depend on could vary. Some realities might have true-false logic, multi-valued logic, paradox-permitting logic, probability-based logic, logic that changes depending on context. This would allow for universes that behave in ways fundamentally different from ours. Number 5, realities where cause and effect are not required. Cause and effect feel natural to us, but there are theoretical frameworks where effects can precede causes. Cause and effect alternate. Cause and effect don't exist. Events occur based on different principles, maybe resonance, similarity, or pattern alignment. The 8th dimension includes structures where causality is optional. A being living in the 8th dimension. Imagine a consciousness that exists across the 8th dimension. Such a being would not perceive reality as a fixed environment. They would see all possible types of existence, not just universes, but frameworks for universes. To them, a universe with quantum particles is one type of structure. A universe made of logic networks is another. A universe without space is another. A universe with shifting dimensions is another. They would understand reality as an open, flexible landscape, one where countless frameworks coexist. Our universe, with its forces and particles and space-time, would look like just one format out of infinite formats. like one file type on a cosmic hard drive. The eighth dimension is an ocean of possibilities. If the seventh dimension is large, the eighth dimension is beyond the concept of large. It is the space of all physical universes, all non-physical universes, all mathematical universes, all computational universes, all logical universes, all abstract structures capable of hosting existence. Its size cannot be measured. It may be infinite in ways that surpass normal infinity. Some realities might be simple, pure emptiness, or simple repeating patterns. Others might be unbelievably complex, structures far richer than our entire universe. The eighth dimension is where creativity explodes beyond physics. Human minds struggle with this dimension. The eighth dimension is not just larger than we can imagine. It breaks the rules our minds rely on. We evolved in a 3D world with linear time. Our brains are built on physical interactions and sensory experience. We cannot easily imagine a reality with no space, no time, no matter, different logic, variable dimensions, different concepts of existence. It feels like trying to imagine a color that doesn't exist in the rainbow. We can define it, but not visualize it. Why the eighth dimension matters? Because it reveals that our universe is not the only way to exist. It's not even one of the only ways. It's one of infinite ways. And if infinite existence structures are possible, then reality didn't have to look like this. Existence didn't have to follow physics. Consciousness didn't have to evolve from matter. We are not limited to what we can observe. Reality is far deeper than our physical world. The eighth dimension shows us that the idea of a universe is just a small concept in a much larger landscape. What does it mean to us? It means our reality is incredibly specific. We live in a universe with space, with time, with particles, with quantum rules, governed by stable mathematics, capable of forming complexity, capable of forming life. Time flows smoothly enough for evolution, chemistry, and experience. This makes our reality rare, precious, and deeply unique. The eighth dimension prepares us for something even greater. If the eighth dimension contains all possible structures of existence, then where do those structures come from? What defines the space of all structures? What chooses which structures are possible? This brings us to the ninth dimension, a level where we consider not the structures themselves, but the rules that allow structures to exist at all. A level beyond form, beyond law, beyond frameworks. The level where possibility itself is defined.
Part 9. The ninth dimension, where possibility itself takes shape. The eighth dimension gave us something astonishing, a view of all possible structures that could serve as foundations for realities. But the ninth dimension takes us somewhere even deeper, to a place where even the rules that allow structures to exist can vary. This is where we stop talking about universes, or laws, or frameworks, and start talking about the nature of possibility itself. The ninth dimension is not a place. It's not a structure. It's not a system. It's the space that contains all variations of what possible can mean. If that sounds abstract, that's because it is. This is the point where reality stops behaving like anything we've ever known and starts behaving like something more fundamental, more fluid, more primal. In the ninth dimension, the question isn't, what are the laws of physics, or even what kinds of reality structures can exist. Instead, the ninth dimension asks, what counts as something that can exist at all? Understanding why the ninth dimension exists. Imagine you're writing a story. You have a language, a grammar, a structure, rules about how sentences can form. In the eighth dimension, these languages of existence can vary infinitely. But the ninth dimension asks a deeper question. What counts as a language? What counts as rules? What counts as meaning? It goes underneath structure to reach the roots of creation. If the eighth dimension is a forest of all possible trees, then the ninth dimension is the soil from which the idea of a tree can grow. It is the foundation of foundations, the possibility of possibility. A reality beyond logic. When we talk about the ninth dimension, we must let go of something sacred to us, our logic. In our universe, logic feels fixed. A thing cannot be both true and false. One event must follow another. Contradictions break reality. But in the ninth dimension, logic is not fixed. Logic is one of the many things that can vary. Like a tool, not a law. Like a setting, not a restriction. A ninth dimensional reality may allow contradictory structures, undefined states, fluid laws, expressions beyond logic, self-generating forms, structures that don't rely on consistency. It's unsettling, but it's also beautiful, because it means existence has more freedom than we ever imagined. The ninth dimension in simpler words. To simplify, 3D is space, 4D includes time, 5D includes branching timelines, 6D includes all start conditions, 7D includes every physical universe, 8D includes every possible reality structure, and then 9D includes every possible rule of possibility. If the eighth dimension is the menu of existent structures, the ninth dimension is the kitchen where new menus can be invented. It is not the realm of universes. It is the realm of meta-laws, laws that define what a law can be. What does a ninth dimensional reality look like? Trying to visualize it is impossible, not because it's too big, but because visualization depends on structure, and the ninth dimension is where structure becomes optional. Still, we can approximate it with analogies. Imagine a huge shifting ocean, but the ocean isn't made of water, it's made of the potential for patterns. Imagine waves forming shapes. Some shapes could become universes. Others could become realities nothing like ours. Others might simply remain abstract possibilities. Imagine the ocean itself changing its own rules. Like sometimes waves behave like matter, sometimes like information, sometimes like thoughts, sometimes like geometry, sometimes like something we have no word for. The ninth dimension is like that, but even this comparison is limited, because water has properties, and the ninth dimension allows the very idea of properties to vary. The ninth dimension controls the limits of what can be. Our universe feels infinite, but it's not infinite in every way. It's infinite within its chosen structure. For example, you can't have negative dimensions. You can't have a universe made of contradictions. You can't have a universe where 1 + 1 = 3. You can't have a universe with no causality. You can't have a universe with no consistency. But in the ninth dimension, you can have possible frameworks where these restrictions don't exist, because possible structures themselves can vary. In other words, the ninth dimension isn't infinite. It contains infinite ways of defining infinity.
A being existing in the ninth dimension wouldn't just see universes, it wouldn't even see reality structures. It would see why some structures exist, why some things can be, why some possibilities arise, why others never do. It would not perceive existence as we do. Instead, it would perceive the space of possibility, like seeing not just all stories, but the reason stories are possible in the first place. To such a being, a universe is simple. A multiverse is tiny. An infinite set of existent structures is familiar. A paradoxical realm is understandable. A reality that breaks logic is comprehensible. We cannot imagine the perspective of such a consciousness, but it can imagine us. To it, we are a tiny, specific possibility born from a particular rule set with a particular structure inside one of countless frameworks. We are a single line in an unimaginable book. Does the ninth dimension contain everything? It contains all possible rules of possibility. But even that may not be everything, because the question remains, why do these rules exist? Why these possibilities and not others? Why can anything exist at all? This is why some theorists propose a 10th dimension, the final expansion, the boundary beyond which there is no further variation. The 10th dimension explores not possibility, but existence without restriction. The ultimate context, the complete totality, where possibility and impossibility dissolve. The calm truth of the ninth dimension. Despite its complexity, the ninth dimension teaches us something soothing. Reality is not limited. Existence is not small. Creation is not fragile. And our universe, tiny, warm, familiar, full of life, is a rare expression within the vast landscape of what could be. We are here because the ninth dimension allows a structure where a universe can form, where stars ignite, where chemistry organizes, where evolution unfolds, where consciousness awakens. We are the outcome of possibility itself folding into a shape that supports experience. That is beautiful and humbling. And where this leads, the ninth dimension shows us the source of potential, but the 10th dimension shows us something even greater. A state beyond possibility, beyond variation, beyond rules, beyond existence as we know it. The 10th dimension is the final chapter, the ultimate level, the end of dimensional abstraction. It is the realm of absolute everything and absolute nothing merged.
Part 10. The 10th dimension, where everything that can exist already does. We've reached the end of the journey. Not the end of the universe, not the end of physics, not the end of possibility, but the end of the dimensional ladder itself. The 10th dimension is the highest conceptual dimension described in string theory's extended models, the point at which nothing more can be added, because everything has already been included. All possibilities, all laws, all structures, all realities, all forms of existence, all forms of non-existence. Every version of physics, every type of universe, every conceivable and inconceivable dimensional framework. Everything. The 10th dimension is the totality. Not a place, not a space, not a structure, not even a form of possibility. It is the all that contains every dimension below it, from the first to the ninth, folded into one unified whole. It is the horizon beyond which there is no more expansion, because you have reached the complete set of everything that can be. Why a 10th dimension must exist?
Let's simplify the progression. 1D gives a point. 2D adds direction. 3D adds depth. 4D adds time. 5D adds branching timelines. 6D adds all possible starting conditions. 7D adds all physical universes. 8D adds all possible reality frameworks. 9D adds all possible rules for possibility. So what's left? What is beyond all laws, all structures, all possibilities? Only one thing remains: the space that contains them all simultaneously, without needing rules, limits, or definitions. This is the 10th dimension, not the space of possibility, but the space of completion, the point where variation itself reaches its maximum expression. The 10th dimension isn't a dimension in the way we think. It is the conceptual boundary of existence itself. Why we cannot visualize the 10th dimension? Every dimension below it gives us something to imagine: space, time, branching timelines, multiverses, alternate physics, alternate reality structures, alternate rules for possibility. But the 10th dimension gives us nothing to hold on to. Because in the 10th dimension, form is optional, logic is optional, structure is optional, dimensionality is optional. Everything that could exist in any form, in any system of logic, in any structure, in any conceivable or inconceivable state, exists here. There is nothing outside it. And because visualization requires limits, boundaries, and rules, things the 10th dimension specifically eliminates, our minds have nothing to cling to. To imagine the 10th dimension is to imagine all things at once, and the absence of all things at once, with no contradiction, because contradiction itself is just one possible rule among infinite others. It's an ocean with no edges, no waves, no water, yet all oceans and all waves and all forms of liquidity are contained within it. A reality that includes every reality. All dimensions collapse into one. In dimensions 1 through 9, each new dimension adds new layers of complexity. But the 10th dimension is different. It does not add anything. It gathers everything. It is every point in every timeline, in every universe, in every physics system, in every reality structure, governed by every possible law of possibility, in every meta-framework, in every abstract space of existence, and compresses them into one unified final state. Everything exists together. Everything is accessible. Everything is one. Nothing is separate. The 10th dimension is the end of separation. A stillness beyond imagination. If a consciousness existed in the 10th dimension, it would not move because there is nowhere to move to. Movement implies difference. It implies a path. It implies change. But in the 10th dimension, everything that can be already is. Everything that ever could happen has happened and will happen and is happening, all at once. A 10th dimensional being would not think in steps or sequences. It would perceive the totality as a single unified state, a state without time, without progression, without before or after, just an all-encompassing now. Total awareness, total information, total perspective, an infinite calm, a peace so complete that time itself would feel like an unnecessary concept. What is outside the 10th dimension? The short answer is Nothing. The 10th dimension is the point where existence reaches completion. There are no further variations to add, no deeper frameworks, no meta laws above it. Once you include all possible universes, all possible laws, all possible frameworks, all possible definitions of possibility, there's no higher level left to explore. You have reached the conceptual maximum, the absolute. Beyond the 10th dimension is not a higher dimension, it is simply the absence of dimensions because everything that can exist is already inside. The 10th dimension is not infinite, it is the source of all infinities. This is one of the most haunting and beautiful ideas. The 10th dimension is not infinite in the way we normally imagine infinity. It is the collection of every type of infinity. Infinite timelines, infinite universes, infinite physical laws, infinite logical systems, infinite mathematical realities, infinite dimensional forms, infinite kinds of existence. Each of these is a different type of infinity, and the 10th dimension holds all of them. It does not extend infinitely, it contains infinite extensions. Like a library containing every book that can be written, including books written in languages that haven't been invented yet, including languages that may never be invented, including languages that don't follow our definition of language. That is the 10th dimension. This means our universe isn't just one tiny part of a multiverse, it's one tiny part of the vast space of existent structures which are themselves a tiny part of the possible rules of possibility, which are themselves a tiny part of the final totality. And yet, the fact that we exist at all means our universe is one valid expression within the greatest collection of existence imaginable. We are a possible structure, with a possible set of laws, with a possible form of time, within a possible kind of space, in a possible reality framework, allowed by a possible set of meta laws included in the total space of all existence. This should not make us feel small. It should make us feel chosen. Because among infinite possible realities, ours is one where consciousness emerged, one where beings can look upward, ask questions, seek understanding, and wonder about the dimensions above. We're the universe becoming aware that it exists. And that is a beautiful thing. Why the 10th dimension is the perfect ending. Because it closes the circle. The dimensional ladder began with a single point, a tiny, simple, almost empty thing. And it ends with something infinitely rich, the complete set of all existence. The 10th dimension is the mirror opposite of the first dimension. The journey goes from nothing to everything, through every stage of structure and complexity. It is the completion of the cosmic story. A calm thought to end the series. Somewhere in the 10th dimension, the full story of our universe is written. Every star, every life, every moment, every possibility, every version of you that ever could be. All of it exists in the totality.